People need clean water, and we often have enough water per se actually for people, but the challenge is how to get right kind of infrastructure and institutions in place to provide that clean water. And that water often is provided by public sector, also because water is seen as a human right. But private sector actors also have a role to play, because they are actually often providing the services for infrastructure and also for institutions that provide that water. The majority of water supply challenges we face are occur in developing countries, and this is for many reasons. One is the population growth, but another one is urbanization, so people are moving into the cities and not always into the areas that are already well established and have a nice infrastructure in place. So sometimes water infrastructure is following actually people to different places, and then providing that infrastructure then is actually more challenging and takes more time and organization. Water is important for development in two different ways. One is to ensure that we have enough food for us to eat, and the other one is then ensure that we have clean water for the households to actually enable our living and well-being. So the situation is challenging, and that requires different kind of solutions. And we see that some kind of a collaboration between private sector and then public sector providing the frame for water services is needed.
We have studied the water sector in Kenya, and it's interesting because it is an example of acute resource scarcity. The population in Kenya is growing rapidly. At the same time, the climate change effects are putting pressure on water resources. There is a need for new types of solutions. We have seen that the development sector has gone through large transformations during the past decades. And if we look at traditional developing countries such as Kenya, there's been a divide between the government and the private sector. And the development sector usually operating under the government, in collaboration with the government. Now we are seeing the private sector being more engaged, and more engaged in an active way, not just as a deliverer of products, but as a co-developer of services. And this is very interesting, but also very challenging. So in the New Global Project, we have tried to study how is this happening in practice now? Who are the pioneers and what are they doing, with whom, and what are the challenges they're facing? And this is an area that it's very much emerging. So all the different players are learning. The companies are learning, the local companies, the Western external companies, the government is learning, the NGOs and different intermediaries are also learning new ways of acting together. One of the intermediaries that we have been studying is UNICEF Innovation. UNICEF is interesting because it is an organization that works on multiple levels. They have great connections on the government level, also on a grassroots level, as well as internationally. Currently, UNICEF Innovation is engaging increasingly with companies to do innovation in the water sector and also in other areas. And they actually leverage from the structure that they already have to do. They have a very traditional structure, but they leverage on this structure to do something very new, radically new. So they're bringing multiple players together. They're doing rapid prototyping. They're doing all kinds of what you would say more very typical innovation activities.
In the water sector, in developing areas, there's various actors. So there's the public sector institutions, private sector actors, various NGOs, development sector organizations, and a huge ecosystem of different actors. I was quite surprised, especially on my first visits to East Africa, how many companies there were developing new innovations for the water sector, both local companies as well as international companies in all sizes. There's small startups as well as then bigger companies that are solving various issues in the water sector.
My name is Benazir Douglas, current acting managing trustee of Mali Trust. We have worked with Mobi Water in the recent past to provide them a ground for them to meet the communities and showcase the product and the model that they have with regards to water tracking and accountability that also comes with the tracking of the water resource. So we partnered with them because we found that it was a very viable solution given the inconsistent water supply in this neighborhood and the need for water that the communities in general have when it comes to water resources. So we found it as a very good avenue for groups that mandate operators to take care of the daily collection of revenue, to actually know how much water is coming in their tanks and how much is also expected to be generated in terms of income based on the rates they charge on the water. And we also find that in this particular neighborhood, the groups don't invest so much in water storage. So then such a model will enable the groups to make informed decisions as to how to invest in water resources when it comes to installing either more tanks or even making informed decisions as to how to incentivize the operators to be open in terms of the money that they generate.
There's a huge demand for water-related services in Kenya, which means also that there's great opportunities for companies to develop new innovations, be they products or services or new approaches for the water sector. For example, there's this Danish company named Grundfos, which has been developing a water ATM for developing markets, and they've been, especially in the beginning, focusing in Kenya. The revenue collected from the water ATMs, from the water sales, is utilized to operate and maintain the water ATMs, as well as to pay the community members or other people who are working for the water kiosks. Often also the private sector partners or companies are getting some share of the revenue. There has been changes in funding of the development sector organizations, and at the same time the sustainable development goals are demanding more private sector engagement and private sector participation in solving global development challenges, and water is one of the great challenges. The different actors have realized that by working together, it's more efficient to develop new solutions for solving the water sector challenges. Innovation intermediaries have supported foreign companies in Kenya, for example, in finding correct partners and accessing the right stakeholders in the sector in order to be able to develop or commercialize their products. A Finnish company called Solar Water Solutions has been piloting their technology with, for example, World Vision in Kenya. This piloting means that they've been enabled to test their technology in the local environment, and at the same time their technology is benefiting the local people in terms of giving them access to clean water.
Finding the right partners is the key, and also being open-minded to who you work with. So rather than thinking about what their organizational form are, think about what they can do for you and what you actually need, because communicating clearly your needs and your roles is one of the key aspects of getting these new kinds of collaborations working. So is your need a pilot? Who can pilot it for you? Is your need contact to the government? Who can do that for you? And so being open-minded in that and taking time to find a good partner.